Hello and welcome to this round table about social and emotional learning on World Education Day. We will do follow the customary Zoom etiquette and give people a couple more minutes just to find their way into the room. But while that is happening, for those of you who are here already, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat, and then we will start the conversation in about 2 minutes, okay? Thanks, Megan. Hi, Pretty. Hi, Olivier.
Hi, Dominic. Hi, everyone. I'm spending my week with many of you. That's great. Yesterday, tomorrow, earlier this morning. I think Deborah, I saw her.
Oh.
Is this event 362 of the day for you, Olivier?
Yeah, but it's the most intense period now. And it's very exciting to see all the connections.
I thought you were going to say this was the most important event of the whole festival, and that was why you were here.
Yeah, that's why I gave everything up. You know, there's the youth design challenge, the peace sessions, everything. I thought, no, I've got to be with Karanga. So.
Excellent. You won't regret it.
I already doubt this, Dominic.
Rachel Island, I was wondering if that was you. How lovely to see you. It's been a very long time.
Hello. Nice to see you too. Thought I'd rock up.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I think if it's okay with you all, we will make a start because we only scheduled this to be a 45-minute conversation. For those of you who have joined since 2 o'clock, then please feel free to introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat. And we would very much like this to be a conversation, a sort of genuine round table. So for the first 10 minutes or so, I'm going to say a brief introduction, and then Vishal Tareja and Tomoko Imai are going to say a little bit about why SEL is important to them and the work that they're doing in India and Japan, respectively. We may well be joined by Professor Jean Clinton from McMaster University in Canada, who was also one of our scheduled speakers. And then we will open it up for as much of a conversation as we can reasonably have in the time available and in this slightly artificial tech-enabled environment. So my name's Dominic Register. I'm the Director of Education at Salzburg Global. Part of my work here in education is to help build communities of practice and bring together people who are working on common issues or challenges and interested in sharing their learning and experiences to try and advance change and develop new solutions. Social and emotional learning has been a key part of our education work for more than a decade now. And back in 2018, one of the outcomes from a series of programs we'd organized was the establishment of a global network for social and emotional learning practitioners that we called Karanga. Karanga is a Maori word. One of our co-founders is Maori. And in the Maori language, a Karanga is a call out in welcome. And so we wanted the name of this new global alliance to welcome people from any country working in any aspect of education who were interested in sharing what they knew about social and emotional learning, pooling their expertise and seeing how we could work together to advance SEL as a discipline within education. And it's lovely to see so many of the Karanga community here on this call. For those of you who aren't yet part of Karanga, then in the follow-up communication after this, we'll send you more information about the Alliance, and you would all be very welcome to come into the community and join us. And you will hear Karanga referenced at different points in the call. I think it was all fairly clear in the explanatory text about the session, that so as we enter the second quarter of the 21st century, it seems a fairly safe assumption that from almost any vantage point in the world, things are less good than they were at the turn of the century. And how we educate our children is also part of how we prepare for the future. And all of us who are involved in Karanga feel that social and emotional learning is an absolutely legitimate and fundamental part of the response to so many of the different challenges that societies around the world are facing. It is also, from an education policymaker's perspective, a fantastic return on investment, because for relatively little financial outlay and relatively small adjustments to the school day, you can help young people develop a full spectrum of social and emotional skills that will serve them incredibly well throughout their academic career, throughout other aspects of their education experience, and throughout life. And we'll talk in more detail about some of the different research which exists to support these positions. So, as I said, we're going to hear a little bit from Vishal and Tomoko now, and then we'll open it up for a broader discussion with all of you, because there is an amazing, some amazing intellectual firepower on this call, and people working with SEL in very different contexts, and it would be fantastic to start to pool those insights. So first of all, I'm going to pass to my friend Vishal Tareja. I'm sure many of you know Vishal already. Vishal is one of the founders of Dream a Dream. He was also one of the architects of the happiness curriculum in Delhi initially, and now in many other parts of India, which is one of the most successful examples, I think, of bringing social and emotional learning into mainstream schooling. A lot of Dream a Dream's work is around working with children in quite difficult, disadvantaged circumstances and using different aspects of SEL practice to help them thrive in their respective communities. So Vishal, thank you very much for doing this towards the end of your day in Bangalore, and always great to have the chance to speak with you.
Thank you, Dominic. It's always a pleasure to be part of these conversations, because social emotional learning is such a critical aspect of our work. And thank you to Learning Planet Institute through the festival for opening up conversations around education transformation. So Dream a Dream has been around for about 25 years, and our focus has been in India on life skills and social emotional learning right from the beginning. And over the years, we've developed many insights around the key role that social emotional learning can play in the lives of children and young people growing up in adversity and difficulty. As Dominic, you rightly pointed out, we are in a world of polycrisis, and there are multiple complex challenges in our world right now, right from the climate crisis to the political upheavals happening in various parts of the world, and the high levels of polarization, the influx of artificial intelligence and technological advancements. And our school systems continue to be stuck in a one-size-fits-all focus on academic success-based institutions. You know, our school systems continue to be assembly line of the industrial era. And while this continues to work for the top 5%, 10% of the kids going into the school system, it is not working for the majority of the kids coming into the school system today. Our kids are also growing up in complex social-cultural environments. Family structures have changed quite a bit in the last few decades. Community structures have shifted. The role of individual identity, individual expression, the role of an individual in a family structure, in a community structure, have fundamentally shifted. And the need for emotional intelligence is so critical in today's world and in the world that we are entering in. You know, the future that we say that we want to prepare our kids for is already here. Our kids at this very moment in different parts of the world are experiencing displacement, to extreme poverty, to war, to high stress environments leading to high levels of suicide. In our own work, we saw these multiple adversities also impacting children's ability to achieve developmental milestones, ability to achieve physical and mental milestones, but also emotional milestones, their ability to understand and respond to emotions, their ability to recognize how emotions are shaping them and shaping the world around them, and how the way they show up in the world is impacting the way the world is shaped. Uh, and when these developmental milestones are either delayed or they're not achieved for children, and they enter an education system that is so linear and focused on academics, uh, our children end up falling behind, end up feeling like failures, end up feeling like a loss of identity. And a majority of them in many countries start dropping out of the education system because they're deeply disengaged. The education system is no longer working for them. The role of social emotional learning, one helps children catch up to developmental milestones, overcome adversity, catch up to physical, social, emotional, mental milestones, become active, engaged, inspired learners. And social emotional learning builds the skills, capacities, behaviors, attitudes, and the emotional intelligence needed to adapt to this polycrisis world, to respond to this polycrisis world, and to also shape a whole new world. So it is, like we're seeing across the world, becoming extremely critical. In India itself, if I look at just the last 10 years, 10 to 12 years, a majority of new organizations that are focused on education transformation in the country already have SEL as the key intervention in their design right from the beginning, as opposed to focusing on just numeracy and literacy. So we're seeing a whole influx of new organizations building an ecosystem for social emotional learning. Second, we've seen governments begin to recognize the critical importance of social emotional learning, especially post-COVID, as they've seen mental and emotional health challenges in children and young people. Many governments across the country now have introduced social emotional learning curriculums, pedagogies, well-being practices, even teacher training approaches, and not necessarily only through Dream Dream, through a whole host of organizations that are working in this arena. So we know the governments in India are definitely invested. And the last point I want to make is that while social emotional learning is becoming a lot more mainstream, and we're beginning to understand the critical importance of it in shaping education of today and the future, we have to be careful that in many of these contexts, also in India, we're seeing social emotional learning beginning to become a band-aid that is going to solve every problem. That is going to help improve learning outcomes. It's going to help improve literacy and numeracy. That is going to help children behave better. It's going to help with disciplining children in the classroom. So without really understanding the expansiveness of social emotional learning and how we can actually shape children's identity and help them redefine success for themselves towards ideas of thriving and human flourishing, if we reduce social emotional learning just to another curriculum, to just tools that you use in a classroom to manage a classroom, tools that a teacher uses to discipline a classroom, is going to become just another band-aid, which is the case with many of the things that we're doing with the education system today. Thank you. I'll take a pause there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vishal. Really interesting to hear from someone who's been at the heart of different system evolutions, because I think India is one of the different systems within India are some of the strongest examples of embedding SEL across the system and starting to build that evidence base of the return on that kind of investment. So I think we'll come back to a lot of what you've said when we open up the discussion, if that's okay. And you can already see some reaction in the chat. Tomoko, if we could come to you now, please. Tomoko Imai is also part of the Karanga executive team. She's a high school teacher in Tokyo and was also the chair of the OECD study on social and emotional skills for Japan, which is a fantastic document if you're interested in looking at the evidence base for SEL and some of the impact to learn from. And we'll put the link in the chat here. But Tomoko, I know it's late in the evening in Tokyo, so thank you very much for staying up for this, and excited to hear from you about how and why you're using SEL in your classroom and the value you see for wider Japanese society.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me, Dominic, and Learning Planet. I really appreciate organizing this important session. As Dominic introduced me, I'm a teacher at Jiugaoka Gakuen High School in Japan, which is a 94 years old private school. And the school tried to introduce new education according to the society's change. And we think that social emotional skill is very important for current adolescent and future of adolescent. Period adolescence is very important and difficult time because our students are trying to grow from children to adult. And that means that their bodies and their brain changes. And it's quite difficult for them to accustom to those changes. And also from societal point of view, they have to become adults and to take responsibilities. So they have many things to overcome, and social emotional skills and social emotional learning can support their mental and the mental health in many ways. So I'm now teaching social emotional skill in my class. Also, they need to control their attention and concentration because there are so many disturbing materials like iPhone and many computers. So the social emotional skills are so important to support their current life. Also, for the future, it's very important. In Japan, this is very uniform society and coherent. And we learn discipline in the culture. And we have been teaching part of social emotional skill in our school. We call it dotoku. We teach discipline, and we need to respect adults and follow the rule. So the suppressing self and individual opinion, students learn this part a lot. So when we drop the wallet with cash, it returned as it is. And usually, when we drop and lose something, everybody can return it. Everybody can get later because nobody would take others people's material and things. That's our culture. So this is a coherent and very, how can I say, compassion-based culture. We always try to understand what other people are thinking. This is good part, but to survive in this complicated and very changing society, students need to learn how to express themselves. This is the thing we haven't taught in our society, but also social emotional skills support how to understand themselves and how to express themselves. So social emotional skills are very important, especially in Japan. Government are trying to promote entrepreneurship education, and OECD did a survey, and it provided a clue to how to support this kind of movement. And maybe I should share the pictogram of the OECD. This is the survey result of the OECD. When students want to think that to start a business, usually those kids have strong optimism, creativity, assertiveness, and energy. Usually, for the case of Japanese kids, optimism and energy is very low. So in that case, we need to boost those kind of skill. But if their countries are different, the necessary skills are different. So this kind of survey results are very useful to support future of current adolescents. So we will continue to design how to teach social emotional skill in school, in high school. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tomoko. I think you've touched on so many really important aspects of social and emotional learning there, the sort of wider value proposition of how it addresses character development and people's sense of identity and belonging within a wider society, as well as the academic value of social and emotional interventions and the way in which social and emotional skills reinforce academic attainment rather than being seen in opposition or juxtaposition to academic attainment, which feels like a very 20th century debate around SEL and academic focus. We'd be very happy to open it up for questions from the wider group at this point for either Tomoko or Vishal, or if you would like to pick up on any of the comments in the chat, Vishal or Tomoko. As I said, also would love to hear about examples from people working in other systems outside of Japan and India of how you've seen SEL integrated into schoolwork and where you've seen the value.
Dominic, I think there's a question from Benedict. Maybe if they want to just say their question and give some context,
Yeah,
I could
thank
respond.
you. Hey, Benedict.
Yeah, hello everybody. So thanks, Vishal, for your presentation. So it sounds, as far as I understood, that India is very advanced on that, set up this kind of SEL program almost everywhere, if I understood correctly. So I was wondering, so did you have any return on investment evaluation or outcome that we could have as kind of could discuss? Because we want to know, I mean, I want to know what we could learn from you from that, because you underline something very important, that we don't have to think that's magical tools. And that's what said Dominic must be combined with everything. And I really believe that we have in France this kind of academy of letters, academy of science, but we also got the academy of social and moral sciences. And I think that belong to this kind of academy to take over this kind of issues.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you, Benedict. Social emotional learning is a relatively new field. So the whole conversation around building evidence and impact measurement tools and frameworks is still very much a work in progress. There have been multiple attempts to develop various impact assessment frameworks. So Dream a Dream itself had in 2014 published a paper around life skills assessment scale that we developed working with clinical psychologists, which is a peer-reviewed paper that I'm happy to share. Now, that scale itself has told us that investment in social emotional learning programs year on year have helped children develop better abilities to take initiative, solve problems, manage conflict, understand and follow instructions in learning environments, and be able to take better decisions in life. And this tool itself we've used now we've been using it since 2009, so we've used it for 15 years. In addition, there have been other tools that have been developed by other organizations across the country, also globally, which look at things like empathy, grit, self-awareness, problem solving, creativity, critical thinking. We recently also launched a well-being scale for adolescents, which we have now administered to about 150,000 youth across the country. And now, right now, we are analyzing the data, but what it is showing us at the baseline is that at say the age of 14, 15, young people are struggling with their own well-being. And school systems are actually adding to the stress rather than supporting with their well-being and preparing them to be more confident about their future. So early attempts, indicators, in terms of indicators, what we've seen is a good social emotional learning program, whether in formal or non-formal environments, has increased enrollment of children, has increased attendance in programs, has increased levels of engagement. We've seen behavioral changes happen in specific areas, and we have seen higher retention through years of learning. So the initial indicators, which are more like outputs rather than outcomes and impact, but to actually be able to measure impact of social emotional learning interventions on at the midterm, which is over a period of 3 to 7 years, and to then measure life outcomes around that, is a work in progress. So those are early days, and we haven't necessarily also linked social emotional learning to other life outcome indicators like health or better financial independence and things like that. Those are early days in India, at least, but there might have been more such thinking and research happening maybe in America or Europe.
Thank you, Vishal.
I've put the link to the OECD survey in the chat because I think some of their findings support some of those wider applications of SEL that you were just talking about, Vishal, in terms of the impact on later life chances and prospects. So the capacity around better decision making, around sustaining long-term relationships. Going back 25 years, then I forget who it was. There was a question about return on investment. But going back 25 years to when James Heckman won the Nobel Prize for Economics, a lot of the work that he had done was around the importance of investment in early years and talking about different manifestations of social and emotional learning. Back then, before it was as mature a field as it is now. One of the things that is often a lively debate within the Karanga community is around the time of optimum intervention. And there is lots of interesting research around neuroplasticity at different stages of development and whether early years is the only time to try to help children or young people develop these skills. And the way the research falls at the moment is it's the most optimum time, but the brain is such a fantastic organ that there are many other moments of cognitive development or neuroplasticity when these skills and behaviors can be developed and acquired, adolescence being another obvious one. But really, any intervention is a positive intervention around SEL. I know we've got some people on the call who aren't focused just on K-12. Paolo, without wanting to put you on the spot too much, I wondered if you would say a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing with SEL in technical and vocational education contexts, if that's okay, and we can expand horizon a little bit. And welcome to the new year.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you also for organizing this roundtable. Well, I can just share that basically on what we were discussing right now. I think that the recognition of the relevance of social emotional learning and well-being is incredibly increasing in vocational education and training. This is something that also Benedict knows very well. She has dedicated a lot of research on it. And with Benedict, to this extent, we are developing some activities that I'm happy to share with you. Basically, there are now many organizations, UNESCO, of course, OECD, that are highlighting the skills for the future. And when it comes to skills of the future, the social emotional dimension, life skills, resilience, well-being are emerging as key topics. So when it comes to vocational education and training, where usually we have been used to focus mainly on professional skills, now there is a kind of paradigm shift. How to do that? So in my job, I'm the director of the European Association of Vocational Education and Training Centers. What we are doing in collaboration with Benedict and the World Educational Research Association, with Karanga, of course, with the inner development goals, is this idea to start putting together, to organize opportunities, channels where we can share practices, best practices, where social emotional learning is implemented, evaluated in vocational education and training, meaning secondary level, also tertiary levels to some extent. So practices, theoretical approaches, and at the same time, we have developed a LinkedIn group, which is open to everybody, where basically we want to exchange ideas, opportunities like this one, with all the community of experts, stakeholders in VET and well-being and inclusion. So basically, for any of you who is interested in this topic, which I understand is not very common, to my knowledge, when it comes to vocational education and training, I think we are, thanks to Karanga, thanks to Vocational Education, World Educational Research Association, we are developing probably something where we can start facilitating, empowering, encouraging these paradigm shifts. Thank you, Dominic.
Great. Thank you, Paolo. There's some fantastic questions and discussions in the chat. Maybe Karambir, your question about SEL in traditional schooling, or is the shift to project-based learning essential? Would welcome other people's thoughts on that. Can say from personal experience, got to do some work with an organization called Cities Rise last year with schools in Chennai and in Nairobi. And one of the things that we were developing was a curriculum mapping toolkit, looking for points in the school day where teachers had autonomy over how they used the time with children and how they could bring in social and emotional and other related practices. So how you welcome the students into the class in the morning, how you use different moments of recess in the school day. And it was a way of weaving different SEL affiliated approaches into the rhythm of the school day before there was any conversation about shifts in curriculum. One of the things that we've seen around the world, and there's great data from so many different systems on this, is around the importance of every adult who is part of the school buying in to a social and emotional learning ethos, that it doesn't land, or it doesn't have the same impact if it's only something which the children do with one another or young people do with one another, or you only experience it from some teachers or some adults working in the school and not from everyone. So it needs to be ultimately woven in, I think, to the fabric of the school. But would welcome other insights or examples. And then maybe after that, we'd come to Olivier's question about AI and SEL and whether AI is an ally or not for the SEL movement. But other thoughts on traditional schooling and project-based learning and social emotional learning? Yeah, Tomoko.
Yeah. I think project-based learning is very effective to practice social emotional skills. I currently teach theory of social emotional skill at the starting part of my class. Then students start their own project-based learning. As a social emotional skills, the theoretical part can create the base for preparing project-based learning. And project-based learning is a very good way to apply what they learn and practice the skill in real-world problem. So PBL is very practical, and also this can lead to the future. Since I'm teaching in high school, students are thinking about their jobs and the society. So PBL is very effective in adolescence classes, I think.
If I may, Dominic, just to really quote what was just said, because I think that to some extent, project-based learning, some examples of work-based learning, for instance, in vocational education training, are really showing that in the impact with reality, with the challenges of life, you have a highway as a learner to understand who you are. So also it means what you need in terms of strengths that you have or weaknesses that you have in order to consolidate the strengths, to work on the weaknesses. So it's something that, for instance, we are trying to emphasize when it comes to the vocational education and training environment, because it's not just having the professional training, but it's to discover yourself, which is the main, I think, the main opportunity to understand the importance of social emotional learning for your personal development.
It was Preeti has an excellent question about, for those of us who didn't experience SEL when we were at school, how do you cultivate SEL practices as an adult? Or how do we make sure that we're equipped with the skills that we're trying to inculcate or help young people develop? Vishal, I was just about to put a link to the book of case studies that you worked on from Dream a Dream, which has some good examples. But while I'm finding the link, perhaps you could say something to Preeti's question, and then we'll move to the AI question, if that's okay.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about adults who went through a traditional education system. In Dream a Dream itself, a big part of our own insight has been that if you want to create transformative experiences for young people, then we have to be able to create those transformative experiences for ourselves. So a lot of our own training of our own team and the teachers and the school administrations that we work with is designed around pedagogical approaches that use play and art. And we've known that play and art intrinsically are very rich mediums to develop social emotional learning competencies. At an individual level, within our own organization, we've developed practices where each one of us find a creative practice for ourselves. So, for example, I write poetry, but there's other people at Dream who probably play a sport or who do art or who do different kinds of practices that helps them kind of be able to go and understand their own inner world, understand their own limiting belief systems, be able to uncondition themselves from the education system that we've all been products of, put ourselves into zones of creativity and collaboration, and then find ways to reflect, grow from there. So that has been a very useful practice for adults.
Preeti, there's a book written by another colleague in the Karanga community that came out at the end of last year called Good Brain, Bad Brain by Mark Sparvel. And the final third of Mark's book is all about techniques that are available for anyone to use to help practice either greater reflection, but also many SEL-related techniques and practices.
Dominic, hi, it's Jean. My apologies. I got the time zone all mixed up, so I'm horrified, but
No problem at all.
present.
You've joined us for a barnstorming finale, Jean. So,
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
we were about to talk about AI and SEL. But maybe before we do that, it would be lovely if you don't mind diving straight in, Jean, just to hear a little bit about your work and the work you do with and the sort of intersection of SEL and psychiatry, if that was okay.
Yes, absolutely. So just in a few minutes. So I'm a child psychiatrist and have had the deep honor of being able to work in community for many years. The early childhood community, particularly, but not exclusively. And so landing on an understanding of social and emotional learning, when we think about what are some of the basic tasks of childhood and young adulthood, it really is learning to create relationships. So in the early years, we call that attachment, both to adults and to peers. It's the ability to manage and express and explore your emotions in socially appropriate, increasingly socially challenging and appropriate ways, and then to explore the environment, to look out and be secure enough, both in infancy, childhood, and adolescence, to be secure enough that you can go and explore the world. And I think when it comes to mental health, social and emotional learning is at the core of that because they are the core features. My work intersects not only with mental health and looking at school mental health and wellness, but also looking at what is the role of social and emotional learning when it comes to education. And I work with a very dear colleague called Michael Fullen. And what Michael is always looking at is leadership and what is the intersectionality and what is the systemness that we can create. And when I think about SEL, one of the things that he has brought to our attention is sometimes the focus on social and emotional learning has been at the cost of academic learning, and that the golden sweet spot needs to be in the combining of what he and I have this model that we've kind of cooked up, that we think about the double helix of education, just like the double helix of DNA, where the backbones are well-being and academic excellence or deep learning, and it's relationships and connections that are the base pairs that join those two strands together. But absolutely essential to this, and this is coming, Dominic, more and more to the fore, is the social and emotional abilities and knowledge of the educators in the system. You know, the idea that Chaim Gino from Yale many years ago says, I fear I create the weather in the classroom. So the educator creates the weather in the classroom. But educators have told me that the leadership, the SEL skills of the leadership, so the leadership creates the weather for the educators. So I kind of have this holographic vision in my head of social and emotional learning, mental well-being and health, and educational excellence. So that as Michael says, that students are good in life, good for society, and good in society. So that's just a little bit of what I was going to talk about if I'd been in the right time zone. How's that? Does that resonate?
Absolutely brilliantly. And also you brought in really excellently the intersection of SEL and good mental health. That wasn't something that the conversation had spent that much time on to date. So thank you very much. It was well worth the wait, Jean.
You're so lovely, Dominic.
We are at the time that we had allocated for this conversation. It's absolutely wonderful way. For me, it's Friday afternoon, and I can't think of a better Friday afternoon in a long while than having had the chance to be part of this conversation with all of you. I would urge you all to download and save the chat before you leave the call, because there are some fantastic references, links, and comments in that. As I said at the very beginning, we will write to everyone who isn't already part of Karanga to see if you would like to join the community. We meet on a monthly basis for an hour. It's a very gentle cadence and meeting. People come when they can and contribute as and when they want to. But it is always an hour, much like this one, where I personally feel deeply enriched by what I've learned and heard in the course of the call. And we will carry on many of the conversations we've started today in the Karanga community. So I hope you'll all be there for that. Thank you, Vishal and Tomoko in particular, but everyone else who contributed, and all of you for giving up 45 minutes of your day for this, and hope to see you at some of the other Learning Planet events happening over the rest of today and tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe. Enjoy your weekends when you get there.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.